This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So let's see. Let me see. I think I have, and I'll put Len down for when he does get here. We got Jake, Bill Franklin, Dennis Correa, Rich Jackson, Paul Frieda, Jay Krugman, Sylvester Mann, Gary Gunville, Les Schoderup, Larry Fish, Peter Kafka, and Len Sierra. Did I miss anybody?
And Dan.
Oh, and Dan. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. Yes, Dan Louie. I did miss somebody. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. So we'll get underway. Thought there might be a couple of new people, but I guess not. So we'll see. They may come in later on. I think we'll start with you, Dan. Did you want to give us an update today? Tell us how you're doing. Anything on your mind?
Yes, yes, sir. Yeah, I'm kind of in a quandary here because I wasn't too sure if I was going to go get chemo today or not, but we sort of ran into some confusion. So yes, I do need some time, please.
You got it. We'll kick off with you. Jake, do you need any time?
No.
You had to think about that, didn't you?
Well, I had to turn my mic on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Bill Franklin, would you like any time?
I really don't have anything to discuss. I just wanted to share a link with the group if anybody's online. Read a really good article about disparities, both economic, cultural, different kinds of disparities that affected outcomes in cancer treatment. So
Yeah.
I'll post it online, but anybody who's on the phone that can't see it, it's at sciencebasedmedicine.org. And it's pretty obvious which article it is. It talks about cancer disparities. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. So that's all I wanted to share.
Okay.
I'll listen in for a while.
Okay. Dennis.
Someone else just joined on the telephone.
John Appler here, Jake.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
You guys.
Rick, it's Dennis. I don't need any time. I just wanted to thank you for that very good article that you put in your announcement for the meeting about the complementary medicine. It's a nice update. Very thorough. You know, we kind of bounce around with all these different things. So thanks for that.
That's a pleasure, and I think most of you saw it if you read the announcement, but that is an article that was brought to my attention this week by a woman called Kaylee C, who recently moved to Tubac, and she's starting an acupuncture practice here. And I know her mother through some community stuff, and so I reached out to her, and it turned out that she had treated me back in Mill Valley. Kaylee had treated me back in Mill Valley about 10 years ago, which is really quite a coincidence. And she had a big practice, acupuncture and Chinese medicine practice in San Francisco. And we were talking about Donald Abram. And she said, "Oh, did you see the article he just published?" And I said, "No." So she sent it to me, and that's the article that I included, which is a good meta-analysis sort of summary article of integrative medicine as it pertains to prostate cancer. So again, it was in the most recent directive, the advance notice that I sent out. If anybody didn't get it or needs it, let me know and I'll send it to you. Mr. Jackson, anything for you?
Other than irritation from an Eligard shot, life's fairly quiet.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that irritation from the Erleada shot, because maybe there's some common wisdom here. I'll come back to you just for a few minutes, and maybe there's some common thought, common wisdom. I don't know.
Roger.
Paul Frieda, anything for you tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to ask about insurance costs, secondary costs, for those people that have Medicare.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you have this
And Jay Krugman, anything for you?
radiation.
Not at this point, Rick. Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't heard from you for a while. How you doing with that apalutamide trial that you're doing there? Or
Well, I think I'm okay. I had blood drawn today. I won't get the results till tomorrow, and another injection on Wednesday, but
okay,
hanging out.
okay. And side effects? Everything.
Yeah, I got lots of them, but I got to catch up on a couple of your sessions that I've missed to understand how to maybe address them.
Well, we've got. We may have time tonight, so let's come back to you and talk about the side effects and see if there's anything we can do. But the reason I'm pushing you on it is only because there's a lot of discussion that the side effect profile of the apalutamide is less than Zytiga. So, it would be helpful for you to share what you're going through, as some of these guys who are on Zytiga are considering apalutamide.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll be here.
So, Sylvester, anything for you?
No, thank you so much.
Okay. Gary, anything you'd like to talk about?
No, I'm just listening tonight.
Okay. Les, how you doing there in Rochester?
Well, we're doing fine. And I don't have anything extra to report. Just want to listen in.
Pleasure. What number are we up to?
Well, I've got 7 left.
Okay.
Including tonight at 9:15.
Okay. Okay. 7 to go. So, next week, next week you won't be done, but we're thinking of you there, man. We're thinking of you. Peter's about to get started. He'll tell you he's going down to see Rossi very soon. So.
Yeah, we have communicated on email. Just told him an update today. I hope he's got it. I don't know.
Yes, I did, Les. Yeah, I had a few questions. I'm only going to be on for 45 minutes, but I just have a few curiosity questions.
So
we're only an hour and a half apart, but we haven't seen each other.
Okay.
But we have been communicating.
We'll promote you up the list, Peter. Larry Fish, anything for you, sir?
Am I on? No, I'm okay tonight. Thank you very much, Rick.
Okay. Is Len with us yet?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Len.
See my
Would you
video.
like? Oh, yes, there you are. Sorry, I've got my head buried down. Yeah, I do see your video. Anything you'd like to talk about tonight?
No, thanks, Rick. Another
Okay.
2 weeks before I see my oncologist. Maybe we'll have something to talk about then.
Okay. And John Appler, anything for you?
No, I'm okay, Rick. Thanks for asking.
Okay, I just sent you a heads up that Jim Allison is going to be on a chat discussion on Wednesday. So you'll look out for that. You can sign up for it. It's with Stat. So.
Okay, will do.
Okay. If anyone else is interested in that, you can let me know. Jim Allison just won the Nobel Prize for the work that he did on immunotherapy, ipilimumab, CTLA4, etc. And he's on a discussion thing on Wednesday morning. So, okay, let's quickly go with Les and Peter between you, because I know both of you will probably have to leave. Peter, why don't you talk talk to Les and about this treatment and your concerns since you're about to go through the same stuff. Are you there, Peter?
Yeah, sorry, I had it on mute.
Okay.
Yeah. Les, it's more curiosity, and I don't know if you've talked to the docs at Mayo about it, but I'm curious about what the field of radiation is. Are they targeting specific lymph nodes in your abdominal area, or are they just generalizing? And or they know where do they actually know where the lymph nodes are, or is the field just generally in the abdominal area and they're just it's just spread around? It's a mystery to me how they do this.
Yes, well, what they told me was they're not targeting individual lymph nodes, but they're targeting, it's just like a blanket over the area. The proton beam is very specific, but they're running it, back and forth. What I think of it as about like a 3D printer. So instead of with a 3D printer, you put material on. With this, they just keep on wiping back and forth and essentially removing the lymph nodes or damaging them, whatever. That's about all.
And they say there's no collateral damage to lungs, heart, other organs in the abdominal area?
Well,
liver, spleen, etc.
That's the intent anyway, because of the proton beam being so specific. It's a pencil point target. It doesn't do anything until it gets to the distance that they have prescribed for it, and it about dies there. The going and coming from there is very minimal. I don't know how that works. To me, it's about like in combat where they have, shoot shells up and have them explode at a certain altitude. And to me, that's about what's doing. It's doing its thing at a certain distance, and that's it.
Interesting. So the theory is that the lymph system is closer to the surface than the major organs. Is that? I don't know. I'm not a medical student, so I don't know. I'm just trusting that this is all going to work out.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily have to be close, because they can apparently target the distance. So if they need to go 2 inches deep, they can do it.
Is anybody else on the call have any experience with this, or any idea of how they do this with proton beam, or had any abdominal radiation?
I'm sort of empathizing or somewhat understanding what Les is saying is that I don't know how it happens. Maybe Paul Frieda can explain it to us, but somehow or other with the proton beam, it's able to pass through tissue, but not actually damage the tissue until it reaches where it's supposed to go.
That's correct.
And so that's when Les says, well, it could be an inch deep or 2 inches deep or wherever it is they've sent it to. That's what I understand. It doesn't have to be near the surface. It could be. It could only be sent in 3 millimeters, or it could be sent in 3 centimeters.
Yeah, I understand that, but his first comment was that they're not targeting specific lymph nodes. So that's where I'm confused. That's where I get confused. So if they're like carpet bombing things, how do you not have collateral damage? I don't know. Anyway, I'll be talking to Rossi about this one for sure, because I want to understand it more.
Sure.
I'm not getting cold feet. I'm just really curious.
Yeah, yeah. And anything else that's on your mind to ask Les?
No, we've talked. I know he's not having any side effects or anything. He's doing fine. And other people I've talked to that have gone through this have done fine. So I'm not concerned about that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question, is Les, to you, was whether you're experiencing any side effects yet. But Peter tells us you're not.
No, I haven't felt anything that I can attribute to this radiation.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, well, anybody else like to ask any questions about proton beam radiation?
Well, Peter, I'm wondering if you're talking about carpet bombing. I imagine that they know where the abdominal lymph nodes are, and that's what they're going to be targeting. Then I don't believe they would just be targeting the space surrounding the lymph nodes, in other words, the entire abdominal area. But yeah, you should certainly talk to Dr. Rossi about exactly how they do that.
Right. I'll let you know. I'll be seeing him on Wednesday.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Give us a report next week on that, Peter. So, Peter, what are your movements now? You're going to California and staying
tomorrow I'm flying to LA in the morning through Denver, and then I'm going to see Dr. Turner in the afternoon, rent a car, and then I'm driving down to San Diego to get a scan, setup scan at California Proton on Wednesday morning, and then I'm driving back to LA and flying out back home to Maui on Thursday.
And then when do you start your proton beam?
Probably around the end of October, 1st of November, something like that. They told me that I'll kind of bug them because I've got places to stay lined up and everything, but they said they need a couple of weeks to do the physics of it or something. So anyway.
Well, just watch out if it's late October, because you don't want him to trick or treat you, right?
Right. I don't want to do
that. Okay. Yeah, it reminds me, some of you have seen it, of my dear friend Jerry Cornelia, who passed 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, I think. And he went to see Larry Fong on Halloween. And he just completed Provenge, and Larry was the principal investigator for Provenge. It was one of the drugs that he pioneered. So Jerry went to UCSF. He drove over in his truck from Emeryville, which is just on the other side of the Oakland Bay Bridge. And he drove over and had parked his truck, and he walked in a full Superman costume. And he went into the appointment to see Larry dressed up as Superman. We've got some really good pictures of that on the web. So I would say that if any of you have medical appointments on the 31st or the 1st of November, be creative. So so there you go, Dan. Do you have an appointment with Agarwal on the 31st of October?
No, not really.
Okay.
We had an appointment today. Can you hold for a second? My resource.
Sure.
She has questions about navigating the UCSF system, because we're running into some dilemmas, confusion. So here's May.
Okay. Hello, May.
Hello. Yeah, we don't know what to do. Just surprised by a lot of things at the appointment today. think since the last time we talked with you, we hadn't really been able to talk to Dr. Agarwal. And last week, we asked whether or not Dan should take pre-med before chemo, just in case he has chemo today. And we were told that he shouldn't take it, that Dr. Agarwal was going to talk to us about a treatment plan. But when we showed up, we were shocked when he said that he wanted to do chemo again, but a different kind of chemo. And we just weren't prepared, and we weren't prepared to. Well, Dan was ready to go ahead, but I wasn't. I wasn't sure what to do. I wanted to think about it. I didn't want him just to say, okay, well, since you have a slot for today anyway, let's go ahead and change and to Capacidaxo. And I just didn't know what to do. And there was no previous discussion about it ahead of time, and I just didn't want to just go up there and say, okay, we're going to do the new chemo, like, within the hour. And everything's just really confusing right now. I don't know what to do. I really don't. He said that if we don't do anything, he could only have about 6 months to 9 months left, or even shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. And he was under the assumption that Dan had already had radiation to the spots that were hurting, but that was another problem. Just trying to get radiation is another problem. And then, I don't know. Then he says, well, you cannot have radiation and chemo at the same time. So now we're supposed to think about it. And if we want chemo, I guess it could be arranged for next week. And after we left the office later on this afternoon, then radiation called, I guess because Dr. Agarwal made a call to them to see what their problem was. And they called and they said, okay, we can see you this Thursday. But they said, it's going to be simple, no gold markers. I don't understand what any of that means. And then I said, well, that means they're going to do radiation this Thursday. And they said, oh, no, that's not even going to be until November, the beginning of November. And so everything is confusing. I just want to know, who can we talk to? Doctors have hardly any time. I mean, is there somebody to talk to about trying to understand what all of this means?
Well, I have several questions, but let me answer the one that's most pressing on your mind, which is yes, there are. I mean, have you spoken to Geronimo before?
Yeah, when we first went over to UCSF.
So she's the person to talk to, and you can call her up and you can say, look, I just don't know what's going on here. I mean, in theory, she's with urology, but given that this is GU-Med-Onc, Genitourinary Medical Oncology, I'm sure she can be helpful to you there too. But I mean, you can tell her that you feel that the communication channels are not very good. You saw the nurse practitioner 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago when we last spoke on this call. And, at the time you were talking about radiation, nobody followed up with you. You knew that Dr. Agarwal had a new treatment plan in mind, but nobody talked to you about that ahead of time. And you weren't ready to accept it when he offered it to you today for the same day. And, you want a little bit of time to think about this. I mean, the fact is that there's a lot going on, and some of it, you've heard me say this before, as a patient, to get well treated in that system, you have to be willing to advocate for yourself. So, the question I would ask you is what has happened over the last 2 weeks with respect to the radiation? Because that was something that you were talking about last time with us, and you were waiting to hear from them.
Yeah, well, nobody called, so we finally decided to go in, and when we went in, we were able to get an appointment right away. I mean, in a couple of days. And so after we met with Felix Fang, we thought he was going to go ahead and have somebody call us to make an appointment for the planning session. But nobody called us for a week. And last Friday, we called again, and we was wondering what was happening. We finally got a hold of someone, and then she says that they don't know anything about it. Nobody authorized anything. And so then she says she will call the doctor and see if he can authorize radiation. And so, I was just surprised. But on my chart, it says he did authorize it on the 4th. But last Friday, the 12th, we called and she said, no, there's no authorization from the doctor. Somehow nobody got the message, and I don't know.
Well,
so today we talked to Dr. Ag.
But the thing is, here's what concerns me, because it seems to happen a lot in your case, and I don't know why. And it just could be completely fortuitous, but you can't let that go. If it was in your chart for the 4th and nobody followed up on the 12th, then you not Dan, but you as his caregiver should be following up with the authority, with the practice people there and saying, what is going on here? Because otherwise it gets swept under the carpet. You get frustrated. You don't know what's happening. I mean, the other thing that was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago when we spoke is that you were going to get a follow-up call from Dr. Agarwal to talk to you about the treatment. But because 2 weeks ago, the nurse told you that Dr. Agarwal had a new treatment plan in mind, right?
Yeah, and he didn't call until we talked to Felix Fang, and I was really angry at that meeting. And so right after we left that meeting, within an hour, he must have talked to Dr. Agarwal, and Agarwal called us up, and he says he knows what's going on. He knows everything, and he says he will talk to us on the 15th. And, he said that he was going to just see us on the 15th. And so that was today.
Well, I understand, but you see, I think that you as a patient, when he says that, you can't say, okay, doctor, because I know you're sitting there not wanting to upset him. But you've got to say, well, can you, we need to know now. We've been waiting 2 weeks. What is it that you're thinking of? Because that would have helped you when you went in to see him today, when he offered you the other treatment plan. You're somewhere between a rock and a hard place. And I do empathize, May, but at the same time, it's difficult to be pushy. But if you're not pushy, you get swept under the carpet, and you somehow or other you got swept under the carpet with both the radiation and the chemotherapy alternatives. Tell us about what the chemotherapy he's recommending.
He said that he's going to do the combination cabazitaxel and carboplatin, but he wanted just to do the he starts out the first session with the only the cabazitaxel, just to see how he responds, and if he's okay, then he will get the second one. The reason, I don't know, it seems like he's not that interested in the case anymore, because it's actually pretty bad right now. Dan had to go in for transfusion because he's so anemic that he had to go in for 2 units of blood, and there's a possibility that he may have to to have even more transfusion because the blood work still, it's okay for chemo, but if he decides to go with sulfigo, then he would have to go get some more units of blood, and that's why he's a little bit hesitant on the sulfigo for now.
Okay, but he certainly can't be doing sulfigo with chemotherapy.
He cannot do both of them.
Right. So, and they don't want you to do the spot radiation until, they don't want you to start the chemo until after the spot radiation. Is that right?
No, he was going, since he didn't have the radiation, he says, let's forget it. We can start the chemo today, is what he had said to us.
Right, but you haven't decided whether you want to do spot radiation or chemo. Is that right?
I haven't decided whether or not he should go ahead with chemo because that was the other thing. Because if he goes with Capacitaxel, then automatically he's not going to be eligible for the lutetium trial that's coming up because this is a phase 1, and with the phase 1, you cannot have more than one a chemo. With the phase 3, you can have up to 2 chemos. However, phase 3 is also coming up, but later at UCSF. However, with phase 3, it's randomized, so you only have a 50-50 chance of getting the drug. And so that was the other thing, was that if you go ahead with the chemo now, it's for sure you're not going to get the you're not going to be in the lutetium study. Dr. Agarwal's thing is do the chemo now because you need it. Forget about the lutetium study. He said that the results are not fantastic. It does not give a durable remission. They've seen people who on the trial so far, they'll get maybe 4 months, maybe, or 5 months, and then, they're in trouble again. So it's not, so he says, don't have your hopes on lutetium to begin with, just do what is needed now is what he is suggesting. But, I asked him if it was him, what would he recommend, but he says, no, he wouldn't answer. He just said, that's a very, very tough question. And he says this decision is up to us.
So can you get on the phase 1 lutetium trial, and when would that start?
Well, he doesn't know. There's lots and lots of problems. And even if we want to go to Arizona, he didn't even know the Arizona one was the same as the UC one. But when he looked it up, he said that there's lots of people on the waiting list, and they would only take a couple of people at a time. And
that's true.
More than likely, Dan wouldn't even get on it.
Well, it's true they're only taking 2 or 3 people at a time in each phase, and it's also true that there's a lot of people on the waiting list because I've heard that directly from Dr. Almeida. I don't know what we could do in terms of trying to help you. I hear your dilemma. Well, let's hear a little bit. I'll throw it open to the guys and see if we can try and give you some sort of a roadmap here. But let's first hear from Dan. I mean, Dan, you're part of this. I hope you're part of this decision. I know that May is obviously a big part of the decision, but what about you? Talk to us about what you're thinking.
Well, my thinking is obviously durable remission, but for how long, I don't know. I have not had good luck with the first or second line treatment. So at this point, I'm willing to try every and anything just to survive.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, clearly you need some treatment. What are you leaning towards?
I've tolerated chemotherapy okay in a way. I'm willing to try that if it proves it has some benefit. But we know that by and large, chemotherapy doesn't have a great success rate.
Well, I mean, I have to say that nothing really. I mean, durable remission is probably not what you should be thinking about. It's managing the disease with each step for the longest possible period of time at each time. I mean, it's unlikely that any one treatment is going to mean you'll never have to have another treatment. But what you're hoping is that each treatment can give you a year, 2 years. That's what you'd like to see. That's where your expectation should be. And that's, hopefully what Agarwal is talking to you about. I don't know that any, when you have advanced disease, that's the most that you can hope for. We've seen some pretty amazing things with the lutetium, as we've talked about on this trial, but we've also seen men who have failed the lutetium. And I mean, the one thing about the lutetium is that I'm convinced about is that you've got to get it early enough in the process. Because if you get it too late, you may not be strong enough to go through all three versions of it. And I see people getting this drug too late, getting this treatment too late. So, what I'm hearing is that the options that are on the table for you right now are, number one, you can do some spot radiation on the sites that are causing pain. It's not clear to me whether you could do the spot radiation at the same time as the chemo or not. I mean, I do know people that have done spot radiation and chemo at the same time, because the spot radiation, usually isn't too many sessions. Number two, you can start a cabazitaxel and carboplatin combination that would start with cabazitaxel and then possibly, or not possibly, it would start with cabazitaxel, and if you tolerate that in the first week or 2 weeks, they would include the carboplatin. Or number three, you can continue just with the androgen deprivation right now, and you can wait for lutetium, but it's not clear how long you'd have to wait, either for the phase 1 trial or the phase 3 trial, but the phase 3 trial is certainly going to be a lot longer than the phase 1 trial. Or number four, you could try Zytiga right now. I mean, would you say those are the four options?
That sounds about right.
Have I missed anything? Is there anything else that's been discussed that we haven't included?
I asked him about some of the old drugs back in the old days, and yeah, he's not sure at this advanced stage whether any of those older drugs would be possible.
What older drugs are you thinking of, May?
He mentioned something called apalutamide. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
Ketoconazole.
Right.
But he just doesn't think it's right.
No.
And he also mentioned, well, do you want me to put you on Keytruda? I don't think it's going to work, but you can try it if you want. That's what's his attitude,
Well, is there any indication from from Dan's sequencing that Keytruda would be in discussion?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so probably doesn't make sense. If you don't have high MSI, you don't have, I think the tumor burden is probably heavy enough, but if you don't have MSI and you don't have any indicated mutations, then he's right. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. I certainly don't think it makes a lot of sense to go to nilutamide or to ketoconazole because we've got much better drugs today. Did he talk at all about apalutamide? Because, you know, some men who fail abiraterone and enzalutamide are doing okay on apalutamide.
I did ask him about it. He said no, because he says it's too close to Xtandi, and if you didn't do well on Xtandi, you're not going to do well on apalutamide. So he says no.
Okay. All right. Well, look, those are the options. I'm going to throw it open to some of the guys, and let's see if we can maybe try and get a path drawn that you might be willing to follow. Len, let me kick off with you.
So Dan and May, I'm a little upset that Agarwal seemingly is refusing to tell you what he thinks is your best option, that he's just leaving it up to you. I mean, this is a very complex disease with complex choices. You'd think that he would at least propose what he believes would be the odds being best for which of those treatment options that you have. To leave it up to the patient, I just don't understand that. That's upsetting to me. That's number one. Maybe you can press him for his opinion next time you talk to him. The other things that I would consider if this were me would be the side effects of the treatment. So, for instance, Dan, do you have any neuropathy, any nerve pain from previous chemotherapy?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. So, I was going to say, if that were the case, then that would likely just be made worse by cabazitaxel. And then the other thing, are you aware of the side effect of lutetium that most guys complain quite a bit about, the loss of their salivary glands?
Is that dry mouth they're talking about? I kind of read that.
Yeah.
What it is? Yeah.
I mean, dry mouth, maybe it doesn't sound quite so bad, but this is pretty severe dry mouth. Your salivary secretions just dry up completely. And then as for Xofigo, I guess the main concern there is that if Dan is already getting blood transfusions, Xofigo is likely to cause further bone marrow suppression and require further blood transfusions. And I know in some cases they will rule out Xofigo if your blood counts are too low.
Okay.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when he was getting the transfusion, I asked the nurse what would be the problem of constantly getting the transfusion. She explained it, but I don't know how many is too many. He had 2 units. Do they count by the units or how many times you go in?
I'm sorry, all I heard was...
They count by the units of blood you get or how many times you have to do it as too many times.
Well, what did she say the problem would be?
Something about, you have more antibodies, and so when you keep on getting, with each transfusion, you will get more antibodies until you won't be able to, they won't be able to find blood that's compatible to give you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I can only tell you that I've known people that have gotten many, many, many transfusions. Does each transfusion weaken you a tiny little bit? It probably does. But I would say it's a function of how many units you get, not how many times you go. But I know people that have had transfusions every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks for years. So, I don't think that's a big issue. Well, I don't want to say it's not a big issue, but I just want to tell you about people that I've known.
Okay.
Sorry, Len, go ahead.
Yeah, I did work in a blood bank for a short time, and I know we did have patients like that who were extremely difficult to find a compatible cross-match for because they'd received so many units and they had so many antibodies. So, I mean, it is a valid concern. I couldn't tell you how often something like that happens, but it is a concern.
Okay.
So I come back to, what do you think, Rick? Don't you think Agrawal should step up and make a recommendation rather than leave it up to Dan and May?
Well, he actually did when he says to do the chemo today. I think that was what he wanted to do. But when we asked him what that it's hard to decide right now what to do, he says, yeah, it's basically up to us. But
I mean, that's what I heard. I heard May say that he is recommending the chemotherapy, but that May wanted to give it some consideration first. And what I'm trying to understand from May is, if he didn't do the chemotherapy, May, what would you have Dan do?
I really don't know. We're trying to get appointment to get a second opinion at another doctor's office right now.
Is it from a genitourinary medical oncologist?
No, from a doctor that we went to 2 years ago that everybody recommended down the peninsula.
And what's his specialty?
He's actually a general.
Yeah. I think that's going to confuse you even more. To go see a general, you're going to be talking about treatments that he may not even be familiar with, because these are he's talking to you, Agrawal, about cutting edge treatments. So I mean, I want to try and tie you down a little bit, May. I mean, Dan was ready to do the chemo. Agrawal is saying let's do the chemo, but you're saying no, I want to think about it. And what are the alternatives in your mind if he doesn't do the chemo? We've spelled out there are 4 options right now, and we've agreed that there are nothing else that could be on the table that's being discussed. So what are the alternatives for you?
I really don't know. I really don't know what to do. I guess I was going to think about it and then maybe just,
Why do you need to think about it? I mean, what if Dan would like to do it and Agrawal is recommending it? What is it? What in your mind is stopping you from saying, yeah, let's do it?
Because I've heard about other people on this call where this doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then there's no more other option after this.
Okay, if it doesn't work, what would you rather do? I mean, it's fine not to do it, but what is your backup if you don't do the chemo?
Nothing. But if you do the chemo and it doesn't work, there's nothing else after this.
So what would you like to do now? Nothing?
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's fine. It's fine to say, look, let's think of an alternative. But if you're saying I don't want to do the chemo because there may not be anything else after it, then the other option is you do nothing. And if you do nothing, you know what that's going to result in. So I don't see how you can do nothing. Let me throw this open to some other people that maybe see it differently to me. Who else would like to talk to Dan and May?
Well, I have an opinion.
That's good enough.
I don't know what to say because I'm just listening to this.
Go, Larry. Go, Larry.
It seems to me that when you're saying, you're not sure if the carboxytoxil is going to be effective or work, and then there are right now 3 other not very promising options on the table, it seems like, well, the logical thing might be to try the carboxytoxil and keep a very close eye on how long it's supposed to be before you see some effect, if it's going to be positive. And then if that fails, then you go to a last-ditch effort, or maybe not the last-ditch effort, but you go to those options you're talking about. Why not? If that fails, then I think you have to say, well, okay, I'm going to not worry about the transfusions, go with Xofigo, or whatever the other option you might want to choose that may be more risky or more difficult. It would seem logical to just start with the most obvious. Because any treatment you do, you don't know if it's going to fail or not. And there's no better option on the table. And the longer you wait, the worse the situation sounds like it probably is going to get. I would say, my opinion would be in favor of trying the carboxytoxil and trying to keep a close eye on it. And if it's really not going to be working, then to switch to Xofigo or something else as soon as possible after that. That it's not like, well, I'm going to do this thing with a possible low probability of working, and then it doesn't work. And then what do? I have no option. No, then you have the other options that you haven't jumped on yet. That's my opinion.
Okay, that sounds logical. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm so sorry that it's down to these choices.
Is there anyone else who would like to? Peter's left, unfortunately. He told us that he would have to leave after about 45 minutes. Is there anyone else who has any thoughts on these options? That's familiar with these treatments?
Hey, Rick, this is Dennis. I have to go along with the consensus here of the chemo, mostly because, it is systemic. It's going to go after every bit of the cancer that's out there. Could possibly help with the bone pain too, I guess, if it goes after everything. And most often, then you're going to get, this is going to give you some months. I don't know how many, but this should surely give you some months if it can be managed properly. You got to be watching your blood counts and all this kind of stuff for the side effects closely. And hopefully you won't have any problems, but you'll definitely get an extension rather than sitting back and not doing anything at this time where, it continues to progress. So, my vote would be to try to get this thing arrested again a little bit for some period of time until maybe something else comes along that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I agree with that too. This is Jake. Especially since Dan has had chemo before and didn't have many side effects, and he's willing to do it. He's not one of those ABC guys, anything but chemo. I'd say, by all means, try it again.
Well, Dan, how'd you like that? You're not one of those ABC guys, Dan. Do you like that?
Sounds like marriage after marriage. If it didn't work, do it again and again and again.
Listen, let me just tell you that Dan was a founder member of the ABC Club. Yes, he was. But we wore him down.
You do have that effect on people, I have to admit. Yeah. Would BAT be an option for Dan at this point?
It's certainly an interesting thought. I mean, I just don't know that it's proven well enough. And you know, there's not a lot of BAT being done at UCSF. I mean, what I would say is that if bipolar androgen therapy was something that Agarwal thought might be a possibility, I'd be more than happy to make the connection between Dr. Agarwal and Sam. What's his last name? What's our guy's name?
Denmead.
Denmead, thank you. And Sam Denmead to have a discussion.
There's also a guy in California that does it, Leibowitz.
Oh yeah, I would not recommend Leibowitz.
Okay.
Just would not. I wouldn't even think about. For me, I mean, if you're going to do it in the context of a center of excellence with you know, with doctors who really know what they're doing, and I don't trust that Leibowitz knows what he's doing. Anybody that gives chemo to people with 3+3 disease bothers me. So I'm not a Leibowitz fan. So, you know, and again, May, I mean, that's an alternative. It's great thinking on Jake's part. That's an alternative if the chemo doesn't work, is the BAT, is the bipolar androgen therapy.
The idea of that, May, is that they give you you get a high dose of testosterone while you're on Lupron. It shoots up your testosterone level, but then it quickly wears off. But the idea is that it resensitizes some of your cancer cells that makes them more susceptible then to some of the other treatments, like Zytiga or the chemo or the even the Lupron. You know, that's the theory. How well it works, we don't know yet.
You can listen to Dr. Denmead explaining it on our website. There's a link on one of the pages. There's a link to him explaining it. It's there under bipolar androgen therapy. You'll find it. But there's a whole presentation he gave us. I don't know if you heard it at the time, but he can explain it to you. You can listen to it. But look, I think, you know, we probably should move on. But I think the consensus on this call, and you know, is to go along with Dr. Agarwal and to some extent with Dan, because he's willing to do it, and to say, okay, let's just move forward. I don't think it makes sense to go to get a second opinion from a medical oncologist who doesn't specialize in this area. If you told me that you were getting a medical opinion, second opinion up in Seattle at Hutch, or you know, maybe down in Los Angeles or somewhere like that, I would say okay. But I don't think that going to see a guy that you saw 2 years ago who you weren't thrilled with anyway is probably going to do anything but take up your time. And I think the best thing for Dan right now is to get him into treatment, whatever that treatment is.
Okay, yeah, it sounds good. I think we should just go ahead with the chemo, tell radiation, forget it, they took too long. Do the chemo first.
Well, what I would say is just verify with Agarwal that the spot radiation that you were discussing is excluded if he starts the chemo. Just verify that, you know, make it, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find out about this, because when that lady called this afternoon, we were in the car driving, so didn't have time to really ask her, you know, in detail, but she said We're not going to put gold markers. We can just do it fast. We will just treat the whole bone, and I didn't understand what all that meant. That there will not be any gold markers necessary. They'll just do the whole bone. I think maybe they just wanted to hurry up and do it because maybe they got a phone call from Dr. Agarwal today.
Well, she may not understand what needs to be done. I mean, normally I've never heard them use gold markers for targeting bone lesions. She may think that she may be confusing this with prostate radiation in addition to the spot radiation. Okay. She may not be getting that. She may not be getting it at all.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. They don't know where it's. They were just going to tell Dan to lay on the table, do the scans, point to the areas where it hurt the most, and that's where they were going to radiate. Is what.
Well, I don't think I can't believe that. I cannot believe that they just have him point to the areas.
They didn't want to do the whole bone because he said that because of his anemia, and so he mentioned that it would be helpful if because on the leg they would have him point to where it hurts, so they can.
Is that what Felix Fink said?
Yeah, Dan, didn't you hear him say that?
I think that's what he said.
Yep, that's what he said.
Okay.
Only radiate the areas that hurt.
Because they can't understand why. I don't know. It's like they don't know why his femurs are hurting.
We do need to move on, but I would just say that just try and get this radiation thing, and also bear in mind, as Dennis said correctly, that it could be that and I've seen this happen, that when you start the systemic treatment of a chemotherapy, it can relieve the pain.
Yeah, well, that's what happened with docetaxel.
Well, okay, so maybe then just leave the spot radiation in your in reserve for a while. Okay.
Okay.
And
thank you.
You can call me.
Thank you, everyone.
And you can call me up in between if you want to discuss. It's fine.
Yeah, it's so hard to think about what the next step is when sometimes you think that the doctor has put you out to pasture. And so I just worry even more because it's my life.
Well, I don't think he has, though, Dan. I think I think there's been some communication problems. I grant you that. It's not been clear. So there's definitely been communication problems, but I think he's very clear on what he thinks is the best treatment for you. And it's been on his mind for a while.
Okay. All right, Rick and guys, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Good luck. Rick, somebody just joined us on the telephone. Would you care to identify yourself? Someone
John
joined.
Appler calling back in, Jake.
Oh, hi, John. Okay. It's John Appler again.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Again, it's. I think the lesson out of all of this for all of us is very important to advocate for ourselves. Really, really important to advocate for ourselves. And if there's a communication problem and if time is of the essence, you just got to jump on it and you've got to be the squeaky wheel. And if you're not getting through to the, if you can't get through to the doctor, talk to the administration. I mean, if they've told you they're going to call you back and time is of the essence, you haven't heard from them in 2 or 3 days, get on the blower and, and if not, you can call us and we'll see if we can come up with some more solutions. But we are our best advocates. Okay. Let's talk to Jay Krupman. and just hear a little bit about this apalutamide and the possible side effects. And Jay, do you think the side effects that you're experiencing are related to the apalutamide or related to the hormone therapy again, or is it impossible to separate one from the other?
At this point, I think it's probably hard to tell between the two. Just go back history-wise, I had 4 or 5 monthly shots of Firmagon the first time, and then I had a Lupron shot, and that's kind of where things went really south for me on side effects. And that was back in 2016. I started again in May of this year with Firmagon, and we added Erleada to that. I'm due for my 7th injection of Firmagon Wednesday of this week. I am experiencing a lot of the same side effects. I don't know. I don't think Erleada's added any side effects to it. My first issues with the first time I went around, it was more mental and everything else. I have a lot of physical stiffness and things of that nature, but they can go away with a little, exercise and movement and waking up and things of that nature. So I certainly don't want to blame Erleada for any of the side effects I currently have. I'm on the same timetable now where after my Lupron shot, I said I'm done because of the side effects. I'm not there right now, and that's with Firmagon and Erleada together. So I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah. How's your mental state?
I think it's better. Yeah, I guess when you're in a foggy mental state, you don't realize it though, and that's. Yeah, I think I'm coherent and I think I'm good, but sometimes that's misleading. I got to say it's not any worse than it was when I went on Lupron, and that was strictly went from Firmagon and they changed me to Lupron because it's 3 months and it's easier on you. And right now I've said I'm not going back on Lupron. I'll continue Firmagon unless it creates the same types of mental thought processes that I had before. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting into that area. And I just don't know how to describe it. But I don't think the Erleada has added anything to it.
Are you exercising?
I try to. And anyone else out there? I know Rick, you do it religiously and everything else. I will go out and at this point in time, and now it's finally cooling off in this area. But if I could get 18 holes of golf in, I thought that was really good exercise. But then I would be totally toast for 2 or 3 days after that. And I used to be very active and could do whatever I needed to do or wanted to do. And now if I spend 4 or 5 hours, 2 or 3 hours in the yard, I'm done for 2 or 3 days. And I just can't do anything more. And I don't know if that's what's causing that. So
how about trying, instead of playing 18 holes of golf or 2 or 3 hours in the yard, how about trying half an hour? and, alternating half an hour one day of doing something that's aerobic, like riding a bicycle or a stationary bicycle, and the next day doing some weights. And then maybe, every few days playing 9 holes of golf. Dennis, can you help this guy? Give him an exercise program. You're pretty good at it.
Well, I would put myself almost in the same boat here as Jay. I'm a golfer also. I was playing 18 holes twice a week. And I found out that it was towards the end of my 18 holes, I was dragging so bad and really feeling exhausted. I'd go home and take a shower and go to sleep for an hour and a half, 2 hours. But I seemed to recover fairly quickly after that. It didn't take me the 2 to 3 days, but it definitely, the golf at a stretch, like I said, 4, sometimes 5 hours, it does get to me. But on my other days, I like to walk, but it's not a long walk because I just don't have that endurance anymore. I have the short-term stuff where I can go out and do it for a while. So I'll walk for 15 minutes and maybe in the morning, and then maybe later in the afternoon, I'll go back out for another 15 minutes. And while I'm sitting watching the tube, I just get a couple of hand weights and start using those and try to do a little weight bearing with that. But it's not a real regimen that I have. It kind of comes and goes. Of course, I'm doing other stuff around the house and car and stuff like that too. That keeps me active. So I don't have the endurance for sure.
I guess, Jay, the message is moderation. And I know you want to go out, and I know you want to play and do all the yard work, but let me just tell you that, yes, I exercised every day when I was on my Lupron, and I wasn't taking an additional drug. But I had to come home and sleep after that. I would come home every day and, I'd exercise and then I'd sleep for 40 minutes to an hour. And I wasn't good to do more than 2 activities on any day. Just couldn't do it. So don't beat up on yourself thinking that, you can't get through it and it's really wasting you, because that's the effect that it has. But I think it's more important that you do a little bit every day, that you do a lot and then wipe yourself out for 3 or 4 days.
No, and I understand that, and that's why I try and figure out where I'm at, what I need to do. It's just a total change. On top of that, just from a mental standpoint, I went through the Social Security disability and was denied. So now I have to figure out how to go through that if I can't freaking play a round of golf once a week. It's just like, how am I supposed to work? But anyway.
Right. So let me give you some comfort on that too. Okay. That was exactly my situation. So I was denied. You don't have any you don't have any clear signs of metastasis, correct?
Correct.
Right. So I had the same situation, and I said to them, I cannot. My job right now is to exercise because I know that that's part of my treatment, and the doctors will verify that. And I cannot go out and exercise and hold down a job. And I finished up hiring a Social Security lawyer, and we had a hearing, and they approved me. And, it was backdated, and so I had to give him, they're limited. I think it's only 15%, so they're only allowed to take 15% of whatever you're awarded, but it was worth it. So you can do it, you can get it, because I got it in exactly the same situation. And it's really worth getting yourself a Social Security lawyer at this point, if you don't have one.
Well, I've conversed with one. I went through the process myself to begin with, and that was just denied last week. So I'll be contacting them again.
Yeah.
I know the reason was for the Erleada, and I can't say that I've had any additional side effects from the Erleada. It's been pretty painless as regards to that, and as my Firmagon treatment to begin with. So hopefully that is a good thing. So
look, yes, it was to talk to you about the apalutamide, but I just want to give you some comfort on some of the other issues too. And you know, and I do think that if you exercise every day, it helps your mental state because it gets those endorphins going. And I can only talk to you from my own pragmatic experience on the Social Security, which was that I was the same as you. I handled it myself. I got denied. When I got denied, I hired a Social Security lawyer, and they got me the benefits.
Benefits. Well, that's good. And I am pursuing it now. So
good. Okay.
That's where I'm at. I'll have new results probably tomorrow or Wednesday.
Okay. Well, you'll tell us how you're doing on those results.
Will do.
Okay. Carl Foreman, I know you joined us late. Did you want to raise anything today?
Hi. So I guess to raise some things, over the weekend I attended a conference at PCI, Prostate Cancer International. It was a one-day conference in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Right.
And
so, let me just stop you. I just want to know if you want some time, because we'll make some time for you if you would like some time today.
Well, I guess just to give an update on two key points on the conference, if you want to give me 5 minutes.
Okay, so we'll come back to you to talk about that. I know Rich Jackson was there as well, so we'll definitely come back to you. Paul Frieda, you're up.
Okay, yeah, I am curious about what other people's experiences with their medical insurance expense. I'm paying about $500 a month now, about $145 for the Medicare directly from my Social Security, and then my secondary is now at about $350. Now, I've been reluctant to change for a long time because it's my understanding that if I go over to an HMO, I have to only deal with doctors that are in their network, and I would like the ability, as things get more difficult, to be able to go to some of the more advanced places like MD Anderson or Johns Hopkins or Memorial Sloan Kettering. And I'm fearful that if I do try to save money and switch to an HMO, that I won't have those options as things become more complicated for me. Do I have my head on straight?
Well, you do have your head on straight. I mean, that's kind of the situation that's there. The HMOs and the Advantage plans and the HMOs are definitely less expensive. They don't exclude you from going out, but you have to pay a much larger deductible. I think in my plan, my plan is $10 a month. I think it may be even going down to nothing, the Advantage plan. But it's 40% if I want to go outside of the plan. And then, of course, I've got copays with every appointment, but my monthly premium is very little. So I'm thinking, well, do I want to switch to a better plan, to a plan F or a plan G or a plan F, and pay what it would be in this area, which is about $150 a month, I think, 106, something like that, 125 to 150 a month, or do I want to keep that in my pocket? And God forbid I need better treatment. I pay the out of pocket and then try and switch at the end of the year. It's not clear to me how easy it is to switch between plans. That's the only thing that is a concern to me, because whilst there's supposedly no issues on pre-existing conditions, and maybe other people have input on this, it may be hard to switch between plans if you have pre-existing conditions.
Absolutely, that's true. It's called forming here, and my most recent, for the past 2 or 3 years, I was selling various Medicare plans, Advantage plans, as well as supplement plans. I can tell you that the way they work, with the Advantage plans, you can switch back and forth during open enrollment, which is right now, October 15th to December 7th. It's effective for the calendar year, and you can switch between those Advantage plans if you want. And as you well know, you have doctors, it's a network of doctors, you're restricted to that network. You typically can't go outside of it, except, as you explained, at tremendous cost. So while the monthly premiums are quite low, your overall out-of-pocket cost could be tremendously high, as opposed to Medicare supplements. And there's the Plan F and the Plan G. The Plan F is going to be going away within the next 2 years or so. And the only difference between the F and the G is that with the F, there's no deductible. With the G, there is. So when I had given sales presentations in the past, I would say that your savings in your monthly premium are somewhere around $400 to $500 per year, and the only difference between the F and the G is that the G, you are self-funding that Part B deductible, which is $183. So mathematically, it doesn't make sense to go with the F plan versus the G. So, but at this point, right, and also if you wanted to switch from an Advantage plan to a supplement plan, you will be subject to underwriting, and you need to be approved. So in all of our cases where we have already been diagnosed with prostate cancer, it's a no-go.
So what about if Paul wanted to switch, if he currently has a whatever plan he's on, I don't know, say he's on Plan G for argument's sake, and he wants to go from, say, Omaha to United Healthcare on Plan G. Is he still subject to underwriting by United?
There's no logical reason to go from Omaha, which I've done a lot of, United Healthcare I've also done a lot of. The plans are all standardized as mandated by the government. So Plan G, whether it's an Omaha plan or United Healthcare, AARP, they all provide the same coverage. So there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to change once you have a Plan G, unless, and I've had cases where as we all age, the cost of the premiums can be a savings. Again, if you are eligible to switch and be able to be accepted by underwriting, you can save some money on the premiums. But the coverages are exactly the same in whatever Plan G, whatever company.
Right. No, I was thinking because I see variances in the premium costs. But so my question is, if you were in a Plan G and you switched to another Plan G from another company, that would open you up to the underwriting?
Yes.
Okay. So, Carl, this is very, very helpful, and I'm sure we'll open this up in a minute so people can ask you a couple of questions. But that certainly clarifies something in my own mind, and it may clarify some things in your mind too. If Paul wanted to switch into an Advantage plan now, then he might not be able to switch back into a Plan G or a Plan F later. Is that right, Carl? Because
yes, absolutely correct.
Okay. Paul,
Can they kick me out of my supplemental?
No,
And
no, you can't. They cannot drop you, no matter what conditions you will have now or eventually will have. They cannot drop your coverage as long as you keep paying the premiums.
They can raise my rates every year.
Right. Everyone's rates tend to increase. They're typically around 3% per year on average as the increase, and it goes up every year.
Can I
faster than that, though?
So hold on a second, Larry Fish. We'll come back to you. Paul is saying it could be faster than that. Carl, are they limited in how much they can raise their rates, or is it open season?
They are not limited. There's no restrictions on that. I see cases where, obviously it occurs when you turn 65, you become eligible for Medicare. I've had a couple of cases where I have people who are at least 5 years older, in their 70s, and I have been able to save them, again, subject to underwriting. They've saved substantial money, upwards of $800 to $1,000 per year. But there has to be it's usually at least 5 to 7 years later that occurs.
Mm-hmm. So you've had no sign of the disease for some time, is what you're saying. In other words, you have to be disease-free for quite some time in order to pass the underwriting.
Typically, and the underwriting, it varies by company, and that's where it's important to kind of shop around. There's typically maybe a dozen questions, and there'll be a question within the past 2 years, have you been treated for a cancer, or in the past 3 years? Mm-hmm. So if you're already beyond that, then you will probably pass the underwriting.
Mm-hmm. Larry Fish.
Yeah. Hello. Hi. I had a more basic question, since I see there's Carl Foreman seems to be more knowledgeable than my Medicare person by far, because I couldn't clarify the simplest underwriting question. So I'm working and I have insurance through my job, but I'm 67. I'm 70. And if I leave my job and I choose a Plan F, since it's the first time I'm doing that from work to Medicare, I can be refused by underwriting, or I can't?
No, it'll be an automatic acceptance because you have coverage while you're working. Once you stop that, then you will get an automatic acceptance, no underwriting.
Right, thank you. I thought that was the case, but when you started to talk about as people go from one thing to another, they're subject to underwriting, I thought, oops, could that be
no, first
another
time.
donut hole? Okay, thank you. Sorry for guys.
No, you don't have to be sorry. It's a very good question, Larry, and all this information is helpful to everybody on the call. Paul, let me come back to you so you can ask a couple of questions to Carl.
What's the Advantage plans? How does that relate to HMO and PPO? You get a choice for the Advantage plan for each your HMO or PPO?
There are Advantage plans that offer either of those types of plans.
And the PPO is more expensive, right?
Can be, yes.
And it gives you a wider choice of doctors, right?
A PPO would definitely a wider choice than an HMO.
What was the last part?
The PPO would be definitely a wider choice of doctors over an HMO.
Right. Okay. But are you limited, or you can just pick any doctor you want in the country?
Well, yes, you typically are limited, although the PPO gives you the flexibility where you can go out of the network at a higher cost.
I see. Okay.
So normally the HMOs and the PPOs are limited to the particular area where you live. So I think my Advantage plan is a PPO, and most of the doctors are here in southern Arizona, in the Tucson, south of Tucson. Those are the ones that I can access easily. Now, can you go out of that area and still get them approved? I think you can, but it's hard and there's got to be good reason.
Yes, you can. I can give you an example. Aetna, for one example, and again, because I live in New Jersey, I'm more familiar with this, but there are the snowbirds who live in New Jersey and then they go to Florida for the winter. Aetna has a broad network within, I think, about 25 different states that you can use doctors in those locations if you are going temporarily on vacation or for 6 months or whatever. So yes, it's a broader network.
Right. And then if you want to go out of that network, so let's say, for example, Paul, you're in Boynton Beach and you want to go to see Paul Korn at MD Anderson, that would most likely be out of network, and then you would have to, you probably would be responsible for 40% of the Medicare fee as opposed to 20% of the Medicare fee. And yeah, on the other hand, you know, in Florida, it's interesting because there are so few genitourinary medical oncologists that you can make the argument that you want to see a genitourinary medical oncologist, and there aren't a lot of places they can send you. They can send you to Moffitt, and you know, you could appeal and probably get to Moffitt. You might even be able to get to MD Anderson because they don't have there isn't a selection of GU med oncs, and you have every reason to argue that you want to see a GU med onc.
Right.
I don't know the appeal process. I've never done that. Maybe Carl knows more about the appeal process and how you're supported, whether you have to be supported by your primary PCP or not, your primary care physician.
Well, the only way you could know definitively is by going to that cancer center and ask them, who do you accept and who don't you accept? They always have their insurance departments who will be able to counsel you on that.
Right. Good point. Good point. Good point. So, you know, Paul, you could call up MD Anderson and say, look, you know, I live in this part of Florida, and if I wanted to see a genitourinary medical oncologist, and I was on this plan, would it be accepted?
Yeah, right. I understand. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any questions they'd like to? Carl, thank you so much for making yourself available to answer these questions.
Welcome, no problem.
Do you handle insurance out of New Jersey or not?
Well, interesting point, because right now, as you've been talking about disability, I've also applied for SSDI. I did it online, and it takes 3 to 5 months. I also have my own disability policy that I took out when I was working in the corporate world and continued to pay the premiums. And I've made application with them. It's Mass Mutual for full-time disability, and I'm waiting for that. So in the meantime, I can't do any work per se until that is finalized. And once it is finalized, that would definitely mean I would not be able to do any Medicare business going forward.
So let me just tell you this, Carl. I don't know if you're aware of it, but you should not be having to wait 3 to 5 months. You should be approved within 6 weeks. Because you are a pre-approved condition. And after the call, I'll send you the Social Security documentation with metastasized prostate. You're pre-approved for SSDI.
Oh yeah, one of the real difficult questions emotionally that I saw on that electronic application: do you have a disease that will lead to death? And it's like, oh my God.
Okay. Does anybody else? Who else on the call has applied for SSDI with metastasized prostate cancer?
What is SSDI? What is SSDI?
Social Security Disability Insurance.
And that's for people that don't have Medicare?
No. It is essentially to allow you to access Social Security before you're 65. So it really is a moot issue for you, Paul, I think. I don't know. I don't know the importance, maybe Carl does. I'm not sure the importance of SSDI if you're over 65. Does it have a relevance if you're over 65?
No, because the benefit is your Social Security benefit, unless you're not taking your Social Security benefit yet. But for me, I'm going to be turning 64 next month, so really it's only 1 year's worth of a benefit until, and it'll be at my full retirement age. Social Security benefit is what my disability benefit will be.
Right, but the bigger issue is that it allows you to access. It may allow you to access Medicare earlier than you'd otherwise be eligible. For somebody like Carl, it's probably not going to make a heck of a lot of difference because there is a waiting period, and by the time he gets through the waiting period, he's going to turn 65 and be eligible for Medicare anyway. But,
right. Well, for me, my full retirement age is 66 and 4 months. So, but in regards to my disability policy with Mass Mutual, because I made a claim between, and it always pays up to age 65. But in my particular circumstance, because I was between 63 and 64 when I applied, I would be entitled to a 3-year benefit. So that would take me it would take me to my full retirement age.
Right. I forget, but I thought that Medicare, I'm not talking about getting payments, but I thought you're eligible for Medicare at 65.
Yes, and if you're on disability, you'll be eligible for Medicare earlier if you do need it.
Right. That's right. And so that's my point, that you're eligible for Medicare at 65 anyway.
Right.
So
I think you have to wait 12 months after you get SSDI. You have to wait 12 months to be eligible for Medicare. At least that's the way it was.
No, I think it's 28 months from the time of your disability date, Jake.
Well, they gave it to me 12 months afterwards.
Right, but that is payments. We're not talking about payments. There's a difference between payments and Medicare eligibility.
No. I was eligible for Medicare after 12 months, once I was on SSDI.
My guess is that's because your disability date preceded your application, which it can do.
Yeah, I
so
guess.
You have a disability date, and you have to be, and you're eligible for Medicare 28 months after that disability date. Now,
they may have changed the rules, and I don't know. I've been on it for 6 years, so it may have changed the last 6 years.
So, well, that was the case longer than 6 years ago, because that's what I went through, and it's 28 months. However, they predated my disability date from my application. And then there's another period of 12 months that you have to wait from your application before you can be eligible for payments. So there's two separate things. There's a payment eligibility and there's a Medicare eligibility, and they're different. But anyway,
Rick and just Jay, just going through what I went through recently, depending on your condition, they really expedited my application within 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That they went through all that and everything else. So it's not something that, it's going to take you 6-8 months for it to go through. They'll expedite it depending on your condition.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to take as long as you think it's going to take, Carl.
Good.
With the greatest respect that, you're overall a lot more knowledgeable than any of us on this, but I do think that you'll get, it'll come through, the SSDI is going to come through pretty quickly.
Look forward to it.
I am going to put the compassionate allowance link in the chat window right now for you. Okay, so you can take a look at that link.
Got it.
All right, so we could talk about insurance for a lot longer. Are there any insurance questions any urgent questions that anybody wants to ask, or can we move on? Okay, so let's, I never checked in with Ken Anderson. Ken, is there anything you wanted to talk about today? I'm so sorry.
I think he left, Rick.
Oh, he may have left. All right, so let's get Carl and Rich Jackson on together, because both of them were at the Virginia Beach conference over the weekend. Carl, you said that there were a couple of things that you thought were quite significant.
Yes.
And Rich told us that he had trouble staying awake along with both Snuffy and the other fellow that was on Shellhammer, that everybody was sort of nodding off there. So let's hear what your input is on that one.
Well, yes, we're all subject to fatigue at some point, to some degree. But and I'm looking at all of the notes that I took, and I took a lot of notes. There was a urologist, Len Gomella, and he talked about a drug he was very excited about that's going to be coming out in the next several months for treating metastatic prostate cancer based on genetic testing. And olaparib, O-L-A-P-A-R-I-B.
And olaparib has been around for a long time. In fact, we've got several guys that have been on it. So it's not coming. What he may be talking about is it's going to get FDA approved for prostate cancer.
Yes.
Which should have been long ago. But you have to have a gene mutation in the BRCA pathway. It doesn't necessarily have to be BRCA, it could be an ATM mutation, but we're very familiar on this call with the use of olaparib. And in fact, Professor Bill has just been through a medical trial with a ATM inhibitor that was prescribed in conjunction with olaparib, that potentiates the olaparib. In other words, it makes the olaparib more powerful. So, but yeah, please go on. I just wanted to clarify that that's not a new drug.
Right. Yeah. And you're right. He did say it was going to be FDA approved, and he used the term precision medicine in regards to genetic testing, as well as a drug like this that would be specifically targeted. The other key one to talk about briefly is with Snuffy Myers, and it was kind of interesting. He had a table as one of the exhibitors, and it was shared between him and his wife, and he had his book about prostate cancer and beneficial supplements. But aside from that, at the end, when everybody was apparently nodding off, he had mentioned that, and he said very strongly that anyone who's on Zytiga and you have pain, and if you may be using some type of an opiate like oxycodone, that it could be deadly due to drug interaction, and that everyone needs to be aware of that. He's had specific cases in his practice before he retired where people have died. And this needs to be really brought out to everyone's attention.
Len, any comment?
I have not heard this before, Rick. Did he tell you the mechanism or the reason why it was causing death, Carl?
No. Other than to say there was a negative interaction between the Zytiga and these opiate drugs.
I can try and do a quick lookup, but go on with the call.
That's the
Dennis?
first I've ever heard that one.
Yeah,
I've never heard that
Dennis.
before.
Dennis, has that ever been a discussion with you and your doctors?
The one doctor that I left and fired down here in Tucson, one of the last sessions I had with him that kind of led up to me leaving, I came in and he says, "How you doing on your OxyContin?" And I looked at him like, "What? I'm not on that stuff." You know, he didn't even know what I was taking. But that was the only thing I ever saw. I've never seen anything. Each shipment of the Zytiga I get have an updated list of side effects, do's, don'ts type stuff. And on top of my head, I don't have it in front of me, but I do not recall. I read it every time I get it, and do not recall seeing that warning.
Carl, did he say specifically Zytiga and an opiate, or any second line anti?
I'm just looking at the notes that I wrote, and I did write down specifically Zytiga because that happens to be one that I'm taking.
I mean, this again, this is sort of a typical Snuffy statement. He comes out with these things that are sort of so off the wall and nobody's ever heard of it before. The only thing I would say, well, I probably wouldn't have said this 7 or 8 years ago, is sometimes he's right. And time proves that Snuffy can be right. At the same time, I would have to say that if there was anything to this, Janssen would be all over it, because they don't want that exposure. And if that's something that he said at this PCI conference, then I tomorrow will have Caroline Pavis follow up with Jan Mannerite and see if we can tie this down a little more, because it sounds like it's a little scary, but I just don't understand why nobody's ever heard of it before. And if he's had people that have died because of it, how come he hasn't spoken up in the past? I mean, I find that sort of strange.
That's very concerning to me, because I'm probably going to go from Xtandi to Zytiga within the next couple of months, and I am on oxycodone, and so that's very concerning to me.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find anything, Len?
Well, I checked drug interaction checker, came up with nothing there. Now I'm just doing a broader internet search.
Well, before you get too bent out of shape, Jake, we need to get more information. And if there's an issue, if there's really an issue, then I don't understand why Snuffy hasn't raised it before. If somebody died and he thought it was because of the interaction between Zytiga and an opiate.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't understand why he wouldn't have said anything. Now all of a sudden he drops this in.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, and how many guys are taking opioids who are taking Zytiga? Probably quite a few.
Exactly.
Right, and how does he know that the opiate, that the Zytiga was responsible for their death? That was the first question then asked. What was the mechanism?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah, opioids
sounds like a Snuffyism to me.
Coffee and cream,
I don't know what kind of cream you use, Adam.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They go together. I mean, they're kind of compatible, and they're like Len says. A lot of people with cancer are on opioids, no matter what other treatment they're having.
Well, Len, you were on Zytiga for a while, weren't you?
Yes, I was, but I wasn't taking any opioids.
But it never came up in the discussion with any of your docs?
No, never.
And anyone else on the call taking Zytiga other than Dennis and Len in the past? Larry, have you ever done Zytiga? Is he still with us?
He's here, but he's muted.
Yeah, he's probably gone for something to eat. Well, don't get too. Carl, thank you for raising it. Don't get too shocked.
I couldn't find anything on a quick search.
Yeah, I would be doing your research on this, and in the meantime, I will follow up tomorrow. Zytiga and opioids. I'll do some follow up tomorrow with because if this gets out, then has anybody seen anything on Inspire about this? Has it been posted on Inspire?
Rick, this is Rich.
Yes, sir. Please.
There were a couple of references Snuffy made to anecdotal. I was kind of in and out of it, and so was Snuffy. But there were a few references he made, not to any studies, but more to anecdotal evidence that may indicate could be, lean towards. Unfortunately, I missed that particular part. I think it would have probably woke me up a bit more. But that's the only thing I can come up with that again could sort of explain what he was saying, what he was accusing, but at the same time still had deniability for.
That would sort of make some sense. Does the term anecdotal ring any bells with you, Mr. Foreman?
Not really, no. But I know that Jan was definitely in the audience. She was walking around with the microphone, so she would be a good person to follow up with.
Well, I'll send a note out to both of them tomorrow and tell them that this was reported on the call, and can they cast any light on this, because it clearly would be important. And I'm just wondering if this has shown up anywhere else. Well,
they did indicate that most of the conference was being recorded and would be posted on their YouTube sites, but that's probably going to be a few days before that occurs. This was the closing comments, question answer period.
Well, I'm probably not going to be too happy. Jan Manorite isn't probably going to be too happy to hear it from me. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't copy Jan. I should just suggest to Caroline that she pursues Jan. Maybe I'll do it that way. It's a little probably more diplomatic, and ask her to get back to me. So
the other thing, this discussion kind of brings up the point of keeping an up-to-date list of all your prescription and other over-the-counter drugs on file with your doc too. That's usually one of the first things they check when you go in to see them. Anything to do in your list of prescription.
Yeah.
I looked at another thing I have here is Zytiga. It does say do not take aspirin, products containing aspirin with Zytiga unless your doctor specifically permits this. I don't know why they've got that in there, but.
Well, sometimes the reason that drugs interact in a dangerous way is because both drugs are metabolized by the same enzyme, and so then you have competition for that enzyme, and so it could either enhance or diminish the effect of the other drug. That may explain what's going on with aspirin. I'm not sure.
Are you taking aspirin, Dennis?
No, but I did consider it as a supplement, just a low dose aspirin for heart. But,
well,
what I did, they had an online thing you could put in your age and all this other information, and everything else you're taking, and whether or not it would be a benefit for you And I think it was mostly because of my age. They said probably not worth doing it. So.
Well, the only thing I can suggest is next time you speak to Dr. Singh or speak to your guy down here with the check with him.
Right.
Rich, did you want to add anything else about the conference that that Carl didn't raise?
As I kind of mentioned at the beginning, it was a good introduction for newly diagnosed, for determining terms and the meanings of the different words, especially like for the genetic section that I listened in on. They didn't really cover anything new that I had not heard here.
Okay.
So it was some reinforcement, but it was if they had not been on this call, it would have been educational extremely.
Okay. Back to you, Mr. Foreman. How are you doing with that germline test?
Well, I've taken the color test and the Foundation Medicine. People from Foundation Medicine were at the conference, as they were down in Los Angeles. So I had a discussion with them, and they said they're coming out with a patient guide. And I said I'd be glad to help them review it before they release it if they like. And said, oh, that would be great. So they're supposed to send me a draft copy of it to review. But I don't have any results from either one yet.
Okay. And was my buddy Dave Marshak there?
Yes.
Oh, he was. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. Did you tell him that you talked to us online in our groups?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. Excellent. And are you any further along in your thought processes?
Yes. More frustration relating to Sloan Kettering. The patient advocate, I finally got through to somebody over there, and they said, well, Dr. Zhao is a department head, and she would more than be able to answer any of your questions, and there really should be no reason for you to see any other doctor, and any other oncologist has the option of declining your request. And so I've just given up, really, with getting any more second opinions. I've gotten multiple second opinions. I've spoken to several doctors who attended the conference as well, and the surgery versus the radiation. So I'm continuing on my path. I'm continuing on the trial, and I will have the surgery, which is scheduled for November 14th.
Okay. All right. All right, guys. So did you see the link I put in the window for you, Carl?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, that's it for tonight. We covered quite a lot of stuff, and was a good call. And Carl, you mentioned earlier on about Snuffy's supplements and prostate cancer and his supplements. So I do urge you and anyone else who hasn't looked at it to read Don Abrams' article on integrative prostate cancer and integrative medicine that I referenced in the in my email this week. Is there anybody online who needs that reference before I hang up? Or do you all have it from the email I sent out?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So, all right. Well, we'll be meeting again on Tuesday, next Tuesday. I will talk to you all at that point, and I'll say good night to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Dan, and May, speaking on behalf of May. Thank you again.
Sure. Good night. Good night.
Good night.